And I just wanted to give just a report about what my husband and I did a few weeks ago. We attended a conference called the Reawaken America Tour, and Lieutenant General Michael Flynn was the keynote speaker there. My husband had a chance to tell him my story backstage, and there were 2,000 people attending and about 1 million people watching online. To my surprise, General Flynn called me out of the audience to the stage to share my story of how I was fired by KCSOS in June of 2022, and then I won the election to be on the board in November of 2022. And I was sworn in by the very superintendent who fired me. It was a very surreal moment on the stage with General Flynn, and the cheer from the audience felt like I was at the Super Bowl, so that was pretty neat. I do have a very unique story. I never thought I would get involved in politics. I'm not a politician. There are many people who disagree with my decisions in regard to the COVID mandates, and that's okay. When I campaigned, I simply told my story. I also promised that I would do whatever it takes to stop the indoctrination of children and protect parent rights. I won the election because 18,834 voters chose me. It was a huge win, which I'm still shocked over that, but that was pretty awesome to experience that. I was not appointed. I can say that with confidence that every parent I spoke to during and after my campaign expressed the fact that they do not want the government or the school system to play the parent role in their own children's lives. They all asked me to stand in the gap for them to protect their rights of knowing everything that goes on in their children's lives at school. As long as I'm in this seat, I will do what I promised my constituents. It's not a political agenda. I don't have any reason to play the political game. I'm now an independent teacher with a small family farm that we own and operate. I'm not looking for clout. I'm not looking for recognition or promotion. I'm not making this political. The people in power have already politicized our system. I can't believe we have to deal with tampons in the boys' bathrooms and children socially transitioning gender in school and pornography in the school libraries and the critical race theory. Our job up here is not the same as it was 30 years ago or even 10 years ago or less. Yes, we're here to approve budgets and audits and charters and graduations and other agenda items. I also have a promise to keep, to speak out to protect children and their parents' God-given and constitutional rights. I will still celebrate student accomplishments in our schools, but I will not ignore the promises that I gave my constituents. I'm a regular person. I don't come from a wealthy family. I'm here because the people chose me. I'm here to speak the truth. So I just wanted to share that little bit of a story about how I got here and how I had that opportunity to share that in front of a lot of people. Back in October, I asked Dr. Mendeborough for a list of books from the libraries. This is a separate topic here, of the schools that we have care over. And then when he provided the list, he informed me that they found a few titles that they decided to remove. However, I found one more book on the list that is sexually explicit and inappropriate for children. The book is called Smoke, and it's written by Ellen Hopkins. It's a story, it's actually like a diary format about a girl who was raped by her own brother. I have a sample page from the book, and we need to get this off the shelf, and let's look at this. I have copies for everyone. And if you could take one and pass it around, just a photocopy from the book, so you can see what's available for these children that we have care over. We definitely need to do something about this, so would anyone volunteer to read the highlighted parts of the page? I'm just passing it out. The copy is a little dark, sorry about that.
You're wanting somebody to read this?
Yes,
part?
please.
You didn't want to read it?
I have a hard time reading this out loud, especially in public. It turns my stomach, and but the people need to know what's available to the children in the library. So, would you be willing to read it?
Sure.
Thank you.
Next thing I knew, I was on the floor with my arms pinned over my head and a hand jammed between my legs. Please, Caleb, stop. Don't do this. Oh, come on, he said. Pretend that you don't. But you know you want this more than I do. All the girls do. Then I felt it hard behind his jeans. No, but it came out a harsh whisper. I was terrified Dad would hear. Maybe even more scared of that than what was happening to me. One wicked thrust and Caleb drove himself inside. Me, something ripped, something pried, and I thought he would tear me apart. But I didn't dare scream, and he pretended that it made it okay. See, you like it. I knew you would. All I could do was go limp, tears streaming and soaking my blouse, until he shuddered his finish, punctuated with a disgusting grunt. Jesus, look at all the blood. Then he saw me lying there, skirt hiked up, fluids trickling between my legs. I tried to tell him it wasn't my fault. Caleb stole what he wanted, but Dad wouldn't listen. You came out here to meet him, you goddamn whore. What did you expect? That's atrociously disgusting and doesn't need to be in our schools.
And the cover of this book, and the book is called Smoke, which doesn't have anything to do with what this is about. And I didn't bring a copy of the cover. I should have done that. But it's basically, it looks like flames, and it just has the word smoke. There's no people on the cover. There's no indication of what type of book this is. It kind of looks intriguing, like maybe it's a mystery or something, or, you know. So anyway, I appreciate you reading that, Trustee Little. I know that's awkward and awful. And this kind of stuff is just somehow not just at our schools, but all over California. They even have, so the way I found this book, I mean, I got the list and I compared it to a list on a website called takebacktheclassroom.com. And on that website, there's a team of people, that most of them are parents and grandparents and concerned citizens that have gotten together and researched all of the libraries in California. They have it categorized by state. So, and they have a master list. And so you can put side by side the list of books to check to see if any of their books that they've discovered are on the list that you're concerned about. And so I would like to ask the board, because this is a growing issue in Kern County as a whole, if we could put on the February agenda to discuss our library policy, if we even have one, and then possible action to write or revise the policy.
John?
It's a prerogative of the board if they like to look at a board policy in regards to that. As we discussed with Trustee Cisneros, we did take and remove the book. So the book is no longer in the classroom. We do not have any.
This smoke book is no
It's
longer?
gone.
Okay.
It just does not
Okay,
exist.
so I
in the
didn't know
classroom.
that. I knew you'd removed
Yeah,
others.
yeah,
Okay.
We removed
Okay.
it. Also, we do not have any libraries per se anymore in our schools where kids can go and check out a book. We do have the libraries, as I was mentioning to Lori, in regards to classroom libraries. So when we collapsed all the libraries that we had, the books went to the teachers for them to use for their students. So you could have a policy looked at in regards to those. The court schools have libraries that their students have access to. We do not have any jurisdiction in regards to those components. We've already talked with them. They do not have any or see any books that would be, they do the same type of thing that we would do to see if there's anything that would be considered inappropriate type of a nature. So I can bring to you if you choose to have any policies. That's not a problem. We already have internal mechanisms in place. I spoke with Desiree Von Flew, who's our assistant super student support, and she mentioned that they already have policies, nothing in writing per se, is like you were mentioning, but they have practices where if there was, like this book was a good example, they looked at it, read it, and then took it off the shelf. So, and they've done that with other parent calls that have come in. So we could put something in writing if, as a board would like. It's totally up to you. School districts do have board policies because they do have libraries, and they have a criteria of how books get selected. And then, as you know, the state has their own criteria right now in regards to textbooks and such. So,
Was this, can I ask, was this on the state list of approved books?
that I don't know, Desiree. We could not find it on any list. It was, what happened was when the books were collapsed from the libraries, and then over time, teachers had books that they've left. So we don't know if there was no indication on this book that it was in a
So we don't know
library.
where it came
We didn't have
from,
any
you're saying?
marking that
We
said
don't know where it's-
KCSOS.
okay, thank you.
But it was in a book that was accessible to students. I mean, in a book rack.
And how do we prevent these types of books from coming back in?
Yeah, so what our policy is that we have is any books that want to be introduced to students or brought into classrooms before students have access to, the administration will review to make sure that they're appropriate and that they don't violate any policies or general policies, that have any crude or anything of that nature. We don't have any library books per se that are library driven from a state level because we don't have a true library.
Do we review the books that are available on an annual basis at the beginning of the school year?
Yes, any new books that come in
But
are
any new
reviewed.
books, but not what's already there? It's not like we review everything that we currently have, the entire inventory?
Correct.
Okay.
They don't look at, Desiree has indicated that she will start looking at these on annual because we don't have an idea where this book actually originated from, so.
Right, so
Because
so
of
we
that,
want
she's
to make
gonna be
sure
doing-
that only those books that we've approved to bring in are the ones that are going to be on those bookshelves at the beginning of the school year.
Yes, and that's what Desiree's looking at with her team.
That's a great question, because my concern was they were there until I brought it to your attention to give me the list, and it sounds like when you made the list or got the list, you guys checked it and found that there were others, correct?
Yes, there was about 4 or 5 other books that
Okay,
they were not inappropriate, but they could be deemed inappropriate because of the content that was in there. It was basic content, but not anything that we would want in a school setting. And there's no
Yeah.
requirement that said we had to have them. Like
Okay.
there are some standards with the state that there are specific categories that you cannot exempt books for. This had none of that. It was just very similar to this, but not as graphic.
okay.
This was missed, in all honesty, because the title. We didn't look at the
And
content
most
based
of them
on.
are. It's
The others
shocking.
were more, there was this attention drawn because of either the cover or the name or something,
Right.
and they read through it and they took those off as well. And then the teachers also selected some books that they felt were inappropriate and they took them off.
Okay, so earlier you mentioned a policy, but is that a written policy or is that just a practice that
That's just
you
been the
do?
practice that they've had since we removed the actual libraries, when we downsized our community schools, when we had the decline in
Right,
community schools,
okay.
we removed the actual library environment and put the books into the classroom, so we weren't sending students back and forth
Okay.
to a library per se.
So for that reason, since it's just a practice, that's why I would like to ask the board if we could actually have a policy in place so that parents would know what to do, students would know what to do, teachers would know what to do, board would know what to do if they ever come across another inappropriate book. So would you let me put that on the agenda?
As well as in addition to having the process of what we would want there, but also the ongoing review of what
Yes.
is in the classrooms on an annual basis.
Absolutely, yes.
Does the board have any problems with that?
No, I think it's a great idea. Thank you for the input on that, Dr. Mendeborough, and I'm very grateful for the actions you've taken.
Yes, thank you.
It's
Then the library books policy,
very grateful.
we'll put it on the agenda for next.
But who is going to help implement that policy? Who's going to write it?
I think we should look at what the policy is now,
Okay,
written, and then work it from there.
That's what I agree.
So what I could do is, at the pleasure of the board, is bring to you any sample policies, written policies, and
Okay.
adapt them to what we already are doing in practice. And then you can look at those, and then you can either have that as a first read, if we just bring a policy, or you can modify, and then we can bring it back for, just like you would do any other board policy. But there would be a first read where there won't be any action, where there would be discussion, modification, edits. Then we would bring it back to you at the March meeting if everything's good, and then you would make that as a formal adoption.
That
that
sounds
good?
great.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's what
Thank
we'll do
you.
then.
Awesome. Thank you so much.